Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond Recovery. My guest today is Adrian Cox, and he is actually my instructor for the resonant frequency breathing technique that I have learned and utilized in my course. Breathe to Heal is the name of the course, and Adrian Cox is the name of the instructor. He's my guest today. Adrian, all the way from Japan, how are you this morning? I guess it is for you.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. You could see the light hitting my face. It's morning time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we had a little bit of a time to kind of figure out, the time zone monster, so to speak. I believe, what is it, 8 a.m., and it must be, is it the 14th in your neck of the
It's
woods
the
there?
14th at
Oh
8
my
a.m. Yeah.
goodness, you're in the future from me here. Look at this. Okay. So you know what? We have you on the show today. I'm really happy to have you here. I really appreciate you reaching, or I should say responding to me when I reached out to you, because I'm like, I don't know, is this guy gonna think I'm weird for responding? So basically, you had your course up on Udemy, and I really got a lot out of it, I'll tell you. And it's been a big part of, for what the foundation I'm using for my students is a lot of like breathing, really auditing like the language that they're using, that I'm using, right? So changing my language, my inner dialogue, and my
Mm,
breathing have been key in in my own ongoing alcohol-free life. So really wanted to bring
mm.
you on here and talk to you a little bit about it. So resonant frequency breathing, can you give us your take on it and what it's done for you, and what led you to resonant frequency breathing in the first place, please?
I have about 25 years as a teacher of yoga and different Indian breathing methods like pranayamas, meditation, everything deep dive in that world. I had a yoga school in Bangkok for 25 years, and no, about 20 years. But it's been total about 25-year career so far. And I came across resonant frequency breathing in the last maybe 4 years. And what struck me about it was that an extremely simple method of breathing, that you're essentially breathing between 5 and 6 breaths per minute. And that when you breathe at this rate, that it brings your body into what's called a state of resonance. And this is a technical term, it's not just a new age term. It's where essentially when we breathe in and when we breathe out, the heart rate both it speeds up when we breathe in and slows down when we breathe out. And this is because when we breathe in, oxygen comes in and the heart rate needs to speed up in order to pump that oxygen rich blood through the system. And then on the other side, the blood pressure has an inverse relationship with the heart rate. So as we inhale, the breathing speeds up, and then the blood pressure goes down in order to allow the blood to flow through the arteries. And this relationship between the breath, the heart, and the blood pressure, as well as the nervous system, when they fall into this kind of synchronized relationship with each other, that it's incredibly beneficial for the body. And these are measurable phenomenon. For example, that when we start to breathe at the resonance rate, because the heart rate starts to speed up exactly in time with the start of the inhale, and the heart rate starts to slow down exactly at the time of the exhale. So this perfect relationship, as well as the blood pressure oscillating between high pressure and low pressure, this perfect relationship allows for a better distribution of oxygen rich blood to the body, and it reduces tension in the body so that the blood pressures can start to normalize, which has sort of impacts for people who have blood pressure which is not normal, like either too high or too low. It's very healing. And with that, as this phenomenon starts to happen, the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nerve system, the rest and digest portion of the nervous system begins to come online more. And what that does is it means that when you breathe out, that the braking system on the heart is more effective. So you end up with a greater oscillation between high heart rate and low heart rate. That's called heart rate variability. And if you know anything about heart rate variability, it's lauded as the measure of the strength of our parasympathetic nerve system. And it's also measure of our resilience against stress and our ability to heal and things like this. So resonance rate breathing is one of these things that it feels amazing. It's really easy to do, and nearly anybody can do it. And it has effects that you can strap a person up into different kind of monitors, and you can see immediately that the heart rate variability starts to increase. So I just think that out of all the techniques of breath work, and I love breath work, that's my thing. That's my speciality, so to speak, out of these kind of practices. Resonance frequency breathing is just very accessible, and you can prove it with monitors. So I would say that if anybody has, if you had no other information and you simply were to go based on the faith that what I'm saying or what you're saying about the background of it, and you just start it, you will feel the results in a kind of beautiful, relaxing trance. You start to get some saliva feedback in the mouth, which indicates the vagus nerve is starting to come online, which is related to healing and related to the calming function. So that's how I got into it. It's not the only thing I use, but it's definitely my main go-to technique. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love how you mentioned it's provable with like modern science, because that can be the trap sometimes where some people be debate it, be like, wow, that sounds like hairy fairy, or like it's dismiss it, right? But now you're saying, oh no, this is actually provable, with that, which is really cool. So that element is neat. I like, and like the simplicity. I think the beauty is in the simplicity, right, as well. And you said, and when you say trance, definitely, like when I practice it, it becomes very much like a meditation for me as well, because as soon as I get focused on the breathing and really focus on that, I usually wear in a blindfold. And for anybody that's not familiar with it, whether it's listeners that haven't been exposed to it from my program or anything yet, it's this beautiful, you listen to like basically a 5.5, 6 second tone, whether it's a singing bowl or something, and then you'll hear a tone right after it that implies the inhale and the exhale. And wow, does it ever, yeah, it really brings you into this beautiful spot. Brings me into a beautiful spot. Let's talk a little bit more like the vagus nerve for folks that might, I mean, it's like one of these things like a lot of people have heard of, but like you explain it so beautifully in the course, and how important it is, and how important it is to, make sure that you're, I guess protecting it or treating it right.
The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It branches out of the brain. I'm not an expert on the vagus nerve, but I mean there's whole fields, I mean conferences around just this one
Wow.
nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body, and basically it branches out on the sides of the neck and innervates all the way down to the pelvic floor. It innervates all the digestive organs, the heart, the lungs, and it is both a nerve that collects information about the state of the body, and it also relays the signal to chill out. It's the brakes. So when the heart is going to slow down, and when we're going to move out of a state of vigilance, where is characterized by fleeing from danger or responding to danger, responding to something that needs our attention, that this is what comes online to promote the resting function. And so with the resting function, because why this is important is because so many people are in a state of sympathetic arousal, which is the opposite. They're in a state of relationship to the go, go, go portion, or for that matter, the constant sense of fear and anxiety brings our systems into a state of like, gotta get ready, gotta get ready to run or to flee or to fight something. And this is terrible for the body because it creates inflammation inside the system. And inflammation is the cause or it's at least associated in every single disease. So if people are sick, they have inflammation. And when you bring the vagus nerve to operate more robustly, this has a consequence of making us calm down, sort our mind back into a more calm state so that we can actually see the world as it needs to be, and we can heal the inflammation that is coming online. Now, I don't know, for when it comes to these breathing practices and why I think they're so effective is that they create awareness, which goes into a level which has so many implications about how we live our life, from the choices that we make, the food that we eat, the way that we speak, to ourselves as well, which you mentioned. And I'm curious about that, is the language portion, because I love the language chunk of it. So yeah, that's the short of the vagus nerve. There's definitely much more to learn about it, but there are hacks that you can use to bring them online. One of them is resonance rate breathing, that it works to, you can also do things with your neck, with your eyes.
Yeah.
And you can trigger the vagus nerve to send a bolts of electrical activity through it, and you'll notice that you get saliva, or you get this kind of relaxation response. You go into a trance like that. Yeah, that's the short.
I remember, yeah, there was those ones where you kind of have your head over to the side, or I had my head over to the side, that you have in the, is that the salamander technique? Am I remembering
The
that correctly?
salamander
Yeah,
technique.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really cool. As soon as I did it, and you're like, yeah, and you might start yawning, and as soon as you said that, I started yawning. I'm like, yeah, nailed it. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. It was yeah, again, beautiful in its simplicity. A couple other things that I really remembered from it that has really helped my technique with it is, and it's such a cool name. I forget the actual name of it, but it translates to like victorious breathing, I believe, or victory
Oh.
breath. So you're
Mm.
kind of doing that, like, or it's like is it the ocean style breathing, along
Yeah.
with it, which is like such a cool name. And that, honestly, that helps me get into that zone, like that trance kind of
Oh.
state that you mentioned. So that was really neat. It's because it's just like something that's kind of like, it mellows me out a little bit, I think. And it's for anybody that's wondering what I'm talking about, like it's exactly what it sounds like an ocean breathing. So you can hear yourself kind of doing like a, right? It sounds creepy when we're doing it over the podcast, but you get the idea. So that part was really cool. I believe that you mentioned it was like the actual fundamentals of it, and it's worth mentioning because not everybody, I'm finding myself included, are super aware of how they're breathing, right? And this makes a huge
Mm.
difference. And you mentioned it in the course as well, so let's talk about it. You know, even before we got started, I talked about how my breath, I was finding, was very much trapped in my chest, and that gets into almost that
Mm.
sympathetic style, or like fight,
Right.
flight, or freeze, right? I'm
Mm.
always up in my chest. And the method that you have, I believe it's something along the lines of pear cone uh, technique, where it's like you're focusing on getting into your abdomen first, and then you're raising your chest last. So making sure that you get a nice big full deep breath into your abdomen, and then you're raising your chest afterwards, and focusing on that. And man, what a difference that makes too, right?
The so two things. I guess I Yeah, the Ujjayi breathing is what you're referring to.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There it is.
And I sometimes I've said the word so many times I forget that people may be new to it. What it is you're narrowing the aperture in the throat, which is what closes when you swallow food or water.
Mm.
So that aperture keeps food from going into your lungs. And what you're doing with Ujjayi breathing is you're keeping the aperture half open. It's what you do when you whisper,
Oh, okay. Sure. Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And the why that's important is primarily what it does is that it increases the resistance of the air that you pull in so that the diaphragm has to work harder. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle inside the abdomen, which flattens out, pulls the air in. And when the diaphragm has to work harder to pull the air in, that this builds up core strength. And there's a number of other things. It could also be a kind of a source for meditation practice. So
Mm.
yeah, Ujjayi breathing. It's very easy to do. It's hard. It's easier to do on exhales. It's harder to do on inhales simply because people lack the strength to it. I can include a video in the link description about how to do it.
That'd be awesome.
And um, the as far as yeah, breathing into the chest. Why do we breathe into the chest? Well, there's no wrong way to breathe. If you were, say, going to go for a run, you would want to breathe in the chest. You know, if you're
Mm.
going to go for a kickboxing session, you'd want to breathe into the chest. And the reason is that when we breathe into the chest, it is associated with that sympathetic nerve system arousal. And why that is because essentially, if we go into a state where we're thinking that there's going to be some danger, something to respond to, some stress, then that vigilance that we go into at a nervous system level thinks that it needs to brace our midsection
Mm.
from impact, because if you get hit in the midsection, it's more likely you die than say up into the where you have protective ribs, right?
Right. Right.
And so when the midsection is kind of locked, frozen, then the diaphragm doesn't have a chance to fully move downwards on
Mm.
as it flexes and moves down to accommodate the inhalation. And as a result, then the need to take a breath, the room to create that breath is created by the muscles up in the neck and the shoulders.
Ah. Yeah.
And that's fine for short periods, but it's kind of a poor way to go about as a daily relationship to the breath, because that would mean that you are going to be more stressed out than you ideally want to be in order to respond effectively to life.
Yeah. No. Very well put. Very articulate. And that's like, when that's the old adage of like when you see somebody stressed out, it's like, okay, take a deep breath, right? It just goes back to that. There's a big reason for that. And honestly, it doesn't seem to take too much. I know for me, it's, three or four big, deep, full abdomen breaths will be enough, right? And that takes,
Hmm.
like 30 seconds, if that sort of thing, right? So, yeah, interesting stuff. Breathing has been a huge part of just my last, I say, year and a half, just becoming a lot more aware of it. So, I
Oh, one
really,
more thing.
yeah.
When the abdomen is frozen in the chest breathing, and the diaphragm can't fully flex downwards, then this puts more strain on the heart, because
Mm,
the movement of the blood in the body is done partially by the diaphragm with every single breath. And if that can't move down, if the diaphragm is unable to move down because of tension in the belly, then more of the strain comes up into the heart, and that can create heart problems, high blood pressure, and what have you.
wow.
So there's a lot of reasons to cultivate a conscious breathing habit, and as well as breathe at least some of your day with the diaphragm, right?
Yeah, wow. I didn't know that last part. That's yeah, amazing amazing stuff to know. So thank you. I really want to give you a chance to talk about your story, your personal story. It sounds like a very interesting life you've had. 20 years in Bangkok, 4 years in Japan now, from Seattle. I imagine you grew up in Seattle, at the height of, or at least you're in that vicinity and the height of, the grunge era, which was
Yes,
huge.
sir.
Yeah, that was massive. Like I grew up with that, so let's as far back as you care to go and hit some of these highlights and lowlights if there are some. Not if, uh, if you care to get into them and all that. Let's tell the listeners about Adrian.
So I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I mean, the short version is that then I fucked around with different lifestyle choices, which I'll get into in a minute, and moved to New York. I was in working in IT. I went on a vacation while I was living in New York to Thailand. I did a Vipassana retreat of about 12 days of silent meditation. I had some kind of insight as to how to change my life in a way that I had real vision granted to me at that moment in time. And I went back to New York. I quit my job. I joined a yoga teacher training program in, was it 1998? And I left the United States in 1999 and moved to Bangkok. Started one of the first yoga schools in Bangkok
Wow.
in 2001. Had some quite a bit of success with that. Like a whole world opened up of traveling around the world and teaching at different conferences and kind of experiencing a lot of what the best of the like that sort of lifestyle would be, and then had a certain kind of major crisis in life. Shifted. I met my current wife, moved to Japan. The school's no longer there, and now have a son born about 2 years ago, who was born on my birthday at the same time of day as me.
Wow.
Same time, same day, same animal year. So
Wow.
I feel some sense of destiny with that, I guess. Nonetheless, I got into these practices probably out of a urge to find healing as well. I think what you're alluding to, I mean, given the topic of this podcast, I also reached a kind of a tipping point in my relationship with drugs. I wasn't into alcohol, never was, um, where that world of the early mid 90s of Seattle, that there's just so much drug use, and it just was in the kind of the the air, so to speak, at least for a 20-year-old, right? That I don't know if you talk about this, but I think that when it comes to addiction, there's something like the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to
Yeah,
speak.
for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
the threshold where you're at this one moment in time where you're going, you detect something about how far your life has slid, how far off of the plan that you had become due to your addiction, that can spark a change in person.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that for me, I was lucky enough that I had enough of a kind of somewhere I developed enough of a core self-respect, even though it was a fairly low bar, but I had enough, some kind of sense that my future was supposed to be brighter than the direction it was heading. I was looking around for a vein with a needle in my arm, trying to shoot up. And I had been doing so much dope that my veins had started to recede into
Mm.
my arm, and I couldn't find it. And so I I was poking my arm for about 20 minutes and there was blood running down my arm, and onto my hand, and I held my hand up in front of my face, and I was like, it was this weird moment of kind of like I saw my hand that I should know, but it didn't look like my hand, and
Mm,
I I snapped.
yeah.
That was my turning point, and from that moment I stopped.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. And what was the experience? Thank you for sharing that.
Mm,
what was your experience like when you stopped? Was there was it just
tough.
like, yeah? I was gonna say, like, mentally, was there a lot of trickery? Your brain trying to negotiate you to go back? How
Good
was that
question.
experience?
I had moved to New York shortly after, and sort of wasn't. I don't know. Seattle, for some reason, it was much easier to find drugs. So that said, it was kind of like the analogy that I used at the time was that heroin to me felt like a girlfriend who we had the best sex. We had this, like, I loved her so much, but all my friends hated her. She
Mm,
was toxic as hell, but like I missed her.
mm,
Some It was like a kind of a weird uh it was placed in my mind in that kind of relationship to this, I don't know, like this entity,
yeah.
like a spirit of sorts that was definitely a dark force. But I missed her for years.
Mm. Right. Yeah.
And then actually, I dove really hardcore into yoga practice in New York daily, um, while working my IT job. And at one point I went back to visit Seattle. I was super clean. I had been eating well. I've been exercising. I've been, everything right. And I decided to go visit my girlfriend once when I went back to Seattle on a visit. And it was so weird because it was like I went through all the processes to get it. And so I go downtown, and you have to specifically look for the person who looks sick,
Right.
that's standing on the street corner, and you have to ask that person that you want what they have, which was really bizarre. I
Yeah.
mean, it was all just kind of like I was watching it happen. And thankfully that, what, I tried it again just to visit my ex-girlfriend, so to speak, and it just didn't feel, it felt like I was removed from it, like where at one point it was an identity, it was me in a way, but when I tried it one more time later in life, it was as if I was just observing this toxin moving through my system, and it had no place for me anymore. So I
Wow.
have theories on why that works, or I have models on why that works, but that's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I really like the girlfriend analogy. Very well done. That paints a really neat picture. So you've gotten into yoga, you changed your environment, you moved across the country in New York, you're doing daily yoga practice. Was the daily yoga practice, when was that, the 12-day silent retreat? Was that before, or like just as you moved to New York? Or were you into yoga before that? And then the 12-day retreat was to make you want to pursue becoming an instructor at yoga. Where did that lie in the timeline?
I don't remember. I think I
Fair
was
enough.
I was living in New York already. I was already clean. Um, yeah, if you've never done it, or if you're listening to this and you've never done it, it's these 12-day retreats. They're part of the Vipassana organization. It's
Mm,
not necessarily my endorsement of that organization or what have you, but
sure.
one thing that they do very nicely is they have retreat centers all around the world, and they're free.
Oh,
And you just simply need to go through the process, and you go through a fairly intense it's 10 days, but 12 days on either side. And wow. I mean, for me, that first one just completely brought me to another experience of my own consciousness that was, it was like a temporary awakening.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Wow.
since fell asleep and woke,
Yeah.
that oscillates, but it was
Sure.
definitely an awakening.
Yeah, I've been very intrigued to do one of those, and I was thinking of doing something a little bit smaller to start, a 5 to 7 day or something. So 12 days, or like you say, 10 days with the 2 days to bookend it. Yeah, it's so interesting. What with that process, did you recall? Is it like, what is the hardest? Like I'm picturing there's probably like a hump, and then after you get over that hump, say day three, you relax into it, or is it day seven? Like, what is it like? Because for me, I think I would kind of go into panic mode and have to work through that. And I'm just forecasting it would be like day two or three. I'd start going, oh crap, what have I done here?
Yeah, I mean, the any kind of resistance, I mean, first of all, physically it's hard
Mm,
to just sit in
yeah,
meditation
sure.
for your knees and your hips and your lower back. I mean,
Right.
it's tough to sit for meditation that long.
Yeah.
It's probably easier now that I do so much yoga, but there is definitely resistance in that I felt that came up in me, and then I don't remember at what point, but the first 2 days, I believe it is, you're just focusing on detecting the sensations through the body. You make these kind of
Mm,
scans of the body. This is one method of vipassana meditation. There's a couple others. It's vipassana is related to the Theravada school of Buddhism that you kind of mostly find in Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka,
okay.
and um, then the technique moves into, sorry, I got that wrong. First 2 days, you're focusing just on the sensations of the breath in the nose. That's it.
Wow. Mm,
So feeling of the breath as it moves in, and the feeling of the breath as it moves out, and then maybe the skin and the kind of the area of the nose. That's it. That's all you do for
wow.
as up to about 18 hours a day.
Jeez. That
Geez.
sounds incredibly
And
challenging.
then you move into a process where you're scanning the body for the next 8 days. And yeah, I don't know, everyone will have a different response, of course. I mean, it made me want to flee.
Sure. I think I'd be
But
right there with you.
I mean, in the end, what are you fleeing? You're not, it's
Yeah.
not like no one's forcing you. It's not like, it's nothing too objectionable. It's just your own, the surfacing of the contents of your own mind.
Yeah, right? Which can be reasons to flee sometimes for some
Which
people.
is why we distract ourselves.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Have you been back to Bangkok since you left?
Well, I moved here, and then there was the pandemic, and
Yeah, fair enough.
I
Yeah.
I haven't been back. I'm starting to miss it. I went through kind of a such a big change. I was so ready to leave. I was really tired of the pollution, the noise, the traffic, the corruption, these kind of dimensions which are more visible to you if you live there for a long period of time. And then Japan has been the polar opposite. The
Interesting.
trains run on time. It's
Yeah.
super efficient. Everything's
Yeah.
clean. It's very safe. It's it's been an interesting switch of cultures.
I'll bet. And I imagine it was a great place to be during the pandemic as far as just like the
Yes.
cleanliness, the standards, the politeness, the respect for, yeah, for some of these rules that we had to put in place. So, yeah. So what have you liked about, Japanese culture and, raising a family over there? And second part, how have you been enjoying being a father so far?
Japan is a really fascinating
Yeah.
place. I mean,
Seems like
it's
it.
very deep, it's very old, and it preserves the culture like quite strongly. Um, and there's a lot to admire about Japan. The hard part can be that it's very isolating,
Mm. Hmm.
and the language is one of it is considered by the CIA apparently the hardest language in the world to learn for native English speakers.
Interesting.
So I study every day, but it's coming a little bit too slowly. So it's always kind of an anthropological experience when I go outside, and I'm never not aware that I'm in Japan. I mean,
Sure,
I'm always
sure.
like it's 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 Japan,
Yeah,
because it's always kind of like slightly uh, it's quite foreign all the
right.
time,
All the time.
all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um, so I'm looking forward to going for a trip soon. I'm going to go to Cyprus and film my breathwork teachers, and we're creating a comprehensive online breathwork certification program.
Very cool.
So that'll be my first trip abroad. Being a father, it's like it's a push pull between you have the for me anyways, I miss my freedom and I miss my ability to kind of plan my life exactly as I want to go, but at the
Mm.
same time you get something so beautiful. I think the saying, which I find very applicable, is the one thing that parents and non-parents can agree on is that they both feel sorry for each other. um,
I like that.
or the Bill Murray quote, where he says, like, when you have a child, like, your life as you know it is over, but something completely new begins.
Yeah,
um so
that's
sometimes
cool.
I miss the old life, but I love the little boy so much that yeah, it's that kind of
That
experience.
duality, right? Yeah,
The
yeah,
duality,
yeah.
definitely.
I love the story. Thanks for sharing about, how it's literally you guys share the same birthday. Like you say, there's something cosmically aligned for that all to have come together like that, and it seems
Yeah,
very,
same
very
same
cool,
time,
right?
same time. That's
Yeah,
bizarre.
very bizarre. Yeah, and so I is he Adrian Jr. by chance? Did you go?
His name's Julian, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I wasn't sure if he's here. Well, he's got to be Adrian. He's basically born at the same time and the same day and everything. Yeah, okay, cool. Julian,
We'll see
nice.
how his personality develops. His astrological chart is like, it's basically like take mine and you copy it and paste it and kind of move it one planet over a little bit. Is
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm
unreal.
expecting that some of the tendencies that I have that I don't like will be and the things that I love will be definitely, he'll be a mirror for me 100%.
Yes. Yeah, right? That's going to be
Yeah,
very interesting. Very interesting. I want to give you the chance. First of all, thank you again for coming on the show today,
my
Adrian, and setting
pleasure.
aside the time. It's been great. Just want to give you a chance to say anything you'd like to promote as far as some of your services. I know some folks that'll be listening to this will be interested to reach out to you. Yeah, what do you have going on, and where can we find you online?
I'm at breathyoga.org, and I have two courses out now. One's on the resonance frequency breathing, another one on the suspension of the breath for performance,
Oh, okay.
called Breathe to Energize. And I'm coming out with a new one. It's now done. I'm just putting the last like kind of marketing stuff on it. Is Breathe to Awaken, which is on the Indian pranayamas, 3 specific pranayamas that I learned in Mysore, India in the late 90s. And then, yeah, that's kind of my gig. I love breath work, and I bring all this kind of experience about my background with yoga and breath work to create courses that I hope will be useful. So I'm really delighted to see that one of the unknown students that we're connecting here. And yeah, so for anybody who would like to connect with me, that's where you'd find me.
Excellent. And worth noting that you mentioned you're going to be, coming soon. Right now, you have your courses on Udemy, but you're going to be, I'm assuming, off of the breathyoga.org. You'll actually have like your full on, the one stop shop for like all your courses, the little
Yeah,
community and all that. So coming soon, right? Which
coming
is,
soon, coming in the next
yeah,
few weeks, actually. Yeah.
that's amazing.
So
Yeah. So congrats on that.
thank you so much. Yeah.
And yeah, Adrian, thank you. I can't thank you enough for coming on, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And thanks again.
Okay. Have a great day.
Same to you.